DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves anyone out there, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Then we put all this together into one philosophy, to one process, one brand, one lifestyle, one mindset. We wrote a book on the subject. You're listening to the Daily Masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is the skill of verbal brevity. The skill, and yes, this is a skill, of verbal brevity. Now, it is not lost on me that I, a person with a daily show with damn near 1,800 episodes where I get to talk as long as I want to talk and making an episode about verbal brevity. But I am qualified to speak on this because I only speak like this, where I just get to go off, extemporaneously and, to borrow a pet phrase of Stephen A. Smith, bloviate on any topic that I wish, because this is a solo show. That's just the nature of the show, the way that it's set up. But this is really about how to perform when you are speaking in a group, in a panel type of situation where there is more than one person who has something to say. This could be if you're at a cocktail party and there's 5 of you standing around, and each of you is you're saying something, then they say something, and they say something, they say something. You ever know that person who takes all the air out of the conversation because they just keep talking and they don't stop, they don't give space for anybody else to speak? Or the type of person who you say something about yourself or some situation that you dealt with or some experience you had, and then the other person, relating to what you said, they just snatch the thunder from you and start talking about themselves. You ever dealt with a person like that? Maybe you are that person and you're not even aware of it. If you are, hopefully you got some friends who will let you know. But I think all of you have experienced that before, seen it before, or you just been around someone who you give them a chance to speak or ask them a question, and they just go on and on and on talking about themselves that nobody else ever gets a chance to get a word in edgewise. Now, hopefully I'm not the only person who has ever experienced this. All right? If you don't have no idea what I'm talking about, let me know so I'll never talk about this topic again. But if you do know what I'm talking about, you can also let me know by sharing this episode or by hitting me up via DM or send me a text at 305-384-6894. Let me know that this one hit home for you or it resonated with you very well. But anyway, all that being said, if you're doing any form of public speaking, like right now, this is public speaking. And I can go on for 3 times as long as each of these episodes is. Or if you're somewhere like, nowadays we have this new app, Clubhouse, a relatively new app, Clubhouse, where it's all audio, it's all live, and it's streaming. So what happens in Clubhouse, for those of you who haven't used it, and even those of you who have, you get in a room together. Let's say there's a room about playing basketball. All right, there's a room about playing basketball, and I'm one of the moderators of that room. And I got 3 other people who are moderators of the room, and we invited 5 people up to the stage to offer their opinions or ask a question or answer a question, things like that. And then you pass the mic to somebody and say, all right, Mr. Jason, you go ahead and say what you want to say about LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. And then Jason goes and talks for like 8 minutes straight about his opinion and what he's saying and this and that, and there's no brevity. All right, he's just going for too long. I remember I was in a room on Clubhouse and someone was asked to introduce themselves. And there were several people speaking in the room. The person who was being asked to introduce themselves was not one of the moderators, meaning one of the people who put the room together. And this person got asked to introduce themselves, and they just went on and on and on. They just kept talking. It was to the point that I was muted. I was one of the moderators in the room. I was muted while they were talking, but I was actually laughing because I'm like, is this person just going to tell their whole damn life story? Shut the hell up. And this is one of the things one of the experiences that planted the seed for this very episode that you're listening to right now. Or again, like I said, if you're in a networking event and you meet another person and they just go on and on telling you everything about themselves or just talking themselves up so much that you're like, all right, I wish this person would just stop talking. This is a skill, people. All right, there are some tips that I'm going to share with you here today about how to not only have people like you, but also that they will remember you, and to not be bad in any of these quote unquote panel situations. A panel situation is when there's more than one person who needs to speak, and you need to make sure you get your point in edgewise, that people get the point, that they remember your point, like your point, but at the same time, you don't have to give an entire speech to make that happen. Okay, now, if you have a solo show like this one right here, you can talk as much as you want. All right, if you're doing a keynote speech and it's just you on the stage, all right, you got an hour to speak, all right, talk for an hour, because that's what they paid you for. You got your own radio show, something like that, your own YouTube, go ahead, talk as much as you want. Your Instagram posts on your captions can be as long as you want them to be. But when you're sharing space with other people for speaking, you must learn to speak enough to get your point across, but not so much that everybody else can't talk. Got what I'm saying? Now let me get into the point so you understand exactly what I mean and how to actually implement this. The topic, once again, the skill of verbal brevity. Number one, learn to speak in sound bites. What is a sound bite? A sound bite is where you make your point, people understand your point, people get your point, and then you stop talking. That's a sound bite. Simple as that. If any of you's ever been on radio or you ever been on television, not as the host, but as a guest or a television show where there are multiple speakers, like if you watch the NBA shows like Kenny, Ernie, Shaq, and Charles on TNT, or CNN or MSNBC, where they have like those four people on the split screens and they all are arguing about what this politician did or what the Senate should do in this situation or something like that. You notice this. Next time you watch one of those shows or you see a little clip on the internet, notice how these people speak in sound bites. And when someone goes for like 2 minutes, that's a pretty long soundbite, but 2 minutes also can be a very brief soundbite depending on what they're talking about and the question that has been asked. Or you watch the NFL shows where they, like the show that comes on before the game start that Sunday, and there's 4 or 5 guys sitting around, you have to be able to make your point in like 30 to 45 seconds because everybody else needs a chance to talk. And that's a skill. That's something that the producers will actually go to you and be like, yo, you can't be talking for so long. Or they'll cut you off because you're talking too much. This is a skill that you can develop. That's what a soundbite is. Being able to make your point briefly and then pass the mic to whoever the next person is. Or as I hear people say on Clubhouse, land the plane. All right, don't just keep talking. Don't just keep the plane circling above the airport. Land the damn plane so that somebody else can get on it. So I use the Clubhouse app, where this is just audio and it's just live. So there's no recordings, there's no pictures, there's no comments, and there's no video. So the only thing you can do is talk on the Clubhouse app. And this is the biggest pet peeve in any room that I've been in, especially on any expertise type of topic. So something, if the expertise is podcasting, if it's writing books, if it's entrepreneurship, don't even get me started. Any Clubhouse rooms on entrepreneurship, usually I don't even go into those because everybody in there is a damn expert. Everybody's made $10 million in 30 minutes. Everybody's got a thriving coaching business. Everybody's an expert, especially in anything entrepreneurship. So I don't even go in entrepreneurship rooms on Clubhouse because there are too many experts. All right, there's too many. All right, it's like a expert indigestion that you get on there. But anyway, when someone gets asked to speak on any expertise topic, in other words, it might be a room that's about authors, right? It might be a room about writing a book. So now you got 20 people in the room who've all written a book. So now anyone who gets asked to speak, what are they going to do? If any of you who has been in these experiences, you may have an answer to this question. If you don't, I'm going to tell you what happens because this is human nature. It has nothing to do with the certain area of expertise. It could be entrepreneurship, it could be podcasting, it could be book writing, it could be sports. Here's what happens. Everybody wants to show you how fucking amazing they are. Everybody wants to tell you how great they are. So everybody has to tell you their little story. I did this and I achieved this and I got this and I have these many people and this and that. And this is what happens. When people get an opportunity to ask a question and or introduce themselves, they just talk too damn much. They do not understand the soundbite idea, or if they do understand it, they are failing at executing it. When introducing yourself, here's the point, or here's the takeaway for you who's listening to me right now. When you introduce yourself to a group, especially in a group setting, be able to do so within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, within a range of 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the venue, depending on who you're talking to. Read the room, take the temperature of the room, see how other people are introducing themselves. If everybody else is taking 45 seconds, you take 45 seconds or less. If everyone else is taking a minute and a half, you take it a minute and a half or less. Do not go over what everybody else is doing. Take the temperature of the room. And let me tell you another thing, just as a side note. For those of you who are experts and you have some significant accomplishments under your belt, whatever you deem to be significant, learn to undersell yourself. This right here, I didn't even add this in my notes, but this is something that I'm thinking of now that I'm talking about it. Underselling yourself means this. If you have done a whole lot of things. You've done a lot of great things. You had this long resume. Do not list your whole resume when you're introducing yourself. Don't do that. First of all, you sound like an asshole. Second of all, you sound insecure because you have to tell everybody all the great things you did. Third, everybody else in the room or everybody else who's introducing themselves, they've done great things too. And if your accomplishments do not supersede theirs, then you just sound like a dumbass because you're talking yourself up. But there are other people in there like, yo, I did that 10 years ago. What you bragging about now? Don't do that. And here's the other thing. If you list your whole resume when you first introduce yourself, you have no more bullets in your gun to shoot. All right, so you want to save some of your bullets. So whenever I talk to people about myself, I never say, hey, I've written 27 books, even though it's true. Unless somebody has already pointed it out, and then I won't reiterate it. I'll say something like, hey, I write books. That's what I'll say. I write books. I have a podcast. I publish videos on the internet, been publishing for a while. I played professional basketball. That's what I say. I won't say, well, I played this many years in this many countries. I got this many videos and this many views and this many subscribers. I don't say all those things, even though they're true. I keep those bullets in the holster. And most of the time I don't ever need to shoot them because keep the bullets in the chamber rather. And most of the time I don't ever need to shoot them because someone's really interested in me. You know what they're going to do? What do you do when you're really interested in a person? You Google them, you go look them up, and then you can find out whatever you want to find out about that person. It is much more impressive when someone has to go look you up and they find out a bunch of things about you that you didn't even say because you were being modest than if you go give people your entire resume up front, because then you ain't got nothing else to say. You told them everything we need to know about you. Be able to introduce yourself in a range of 30 seconds to 2 minutes. All right, practice. All right, write it down. Practice saying it out loud so that you can introduce yourself and be done that fast. All right, we know that you're great. All right, you know you're great. We know you're great. You don't have to tell us. We know you've done a lifetime of amazing things. We know you got a bunch of ideas coming in the future, but we don't need your whole story every time you speak. Many people make the mistake of speaking in chapters. All right, any of you read books? You know a chapter is usually pretty lengthy in a book. A chapter could be 1 page, but you get what I'm saying. Metaphorically speaking, people speak in chapters instead of speaking in sound bites. All right, give a paragraph, not a chapter. All right, and those chapters get way too long. And a lot of information gets shared that not everybody needs, and secondly, people won't even remember it. Remember what I told you about building your brand? I talked about this in I believe it was episode 5 of the 6-part series where I was answering the questions of the Prairie High entrepreneurship class students. When it comes to building your brand, you want people to know you for one thing. Not 10, not 2, not 6, one thing. The one thing you know me for is work on your game. Now, there are a lot of things that go with that, absolutely. But if you remember one thing about me is work on your game. And you're like, well, what does work on your game mean? Well, Google it. If you really want to know, you'll look it up and you'll find it, right? You'll find work on your game on Instagram. You'll find it in the podcast. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it on Google. So you'll find it on Amazon. I don't need to tell you. Just remember that one thing about me and you'll be able to find me wherever you go. All right, but do not give a whole chapter about yourself. All right, first of all, people don't care. Second of all, you sound like a dumbass. And third, nobody's going to remember it anyway. Point number 2. Topic here today is the skill of verbal brevity. And again, I am noting the irony of this. Number 2, point story application. This is the framework that you need to pick up and remember. And I'm going to do a whole episode just on this very soon. And when I say soon, you'll know what I mean. Point story application. This is a framework within itself. Every day I'm giving you a framework. So this is a framework within the framework. Okay? Be able to share, and oh yeah, by the way, for any of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I say framework, I did a whole episode on that if you couldn't guess. That is episode number 1592 where I talked about the work on your game framework for business and sports, and episode number 1440, mastering the skill of organizing your knowledge. That's where I explained the concept of frameworks. And then in episode 1592, I talked about the work on your game framework. So I explain what it is, then I give you an example by giving you a whole episode using my own. But anyway, point story application. What does this mean? You need to be able to share 1, 2, or all 3 in a short burst. All 3 of what, Dre? Point is one thing, the story is the second thing, the application is the third thing. Often, here's what happens. Here's the mistake that people make. They start making a point, but they have no conclusion to their point. So they start talking, but they have no idea how they're going to end. Okay, you start flying the plane, but you don't know how to land the plane. All right, what I've heard is landing the plane is the hardest part of being a pilot. All right, it's not taking off, it's the landing. All right, if you can't land the plane, all right, you in trouble. Okay, don't start flying the plane, don't know how to land it. All right, people start making their point. They have no way of landing the plane. And if people are telling you to land your plane, that means you're talking too much. In other words, if you find yourself speaking and somebody says to you, hey, how about you wrap up this point? How about you land the plane? That means you're talking too damn much. I was in this room on Clubhouse a few days ago. I was not speaking. I was just listening. And people were talking about, I don't remember exactly what the topic was, but there are a lot of people in the room. And the person who was moderating was just going person by person, letting people make their points. And every person who was getting their chance to speak was being interrupted during their talk, probably 3 or 4 minutes into their speaking. And if you really think about it, someone speaking for 3 to 4 minutes straight when they're on a panel with a bunch of other people is way too much talking. And someone would always interrupt them and say, yo, land the plane. You're talking too much. Like, come to a conclusion with this. Point story application. Why does a story matter? Because you can make a point. You can just make a point and close it at that. The reason why the story matters is because people are hardwired to follow narrative. And I'll be talking about this when I do the episode on point story application very soon. We remember stories. We do not remember points. We do not remember facts. We do not remember information. You remember some facts and information, and a lot of times these days people remember facts that ain't really facts. But we always remember stories. That's why in damn near every episode of this show, I'm always giving you anecdotes and little stories to illustrate the points that I'm making. Because if I just gave you points, even though you may enjoy it and respect it and believe it and say, hey, this is great stuff, you wouldn't remember it, but you will always remember the story. Like yesterday, I told you a story about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. You will remember that, and that will trigger the point, which is don't play the game so small. You could aim for a lot more with the exact same amount of time, money, attention, energy, and focus. But you wouldn't remember the point if I didn't give you the narrative to go with it. Why? Because as human beings, it's part of our nature to remember stories that will trigger the information. We do not remember information that triggers the story. You follow me? So that's why the story matters so much. And this is why, if any of you ever see me give a presentation or a live keynote or something like that, I always have stories. When I explain the Work on Your Game framework, I have a story for every piece of it. So when I talk discipline or confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative, there's always a story that goes with it because you will remember the story that will trigger the point and that will keep it in your head, and then you'll remember Work on Your Game. You understand? So if people are telling you to land the plane, you are talking too much. And here's the problem for many people who speak publicly: you talk too much. Your stories are too long, your points are too long, you do not have a way of wrapping up the point that you're making, and this is why people are not remembering it, or you don't feel like it's tight enough because you are talking too much. Okay, everybody got that? Good. Point number 3. Topic here today is the skill of verbal brevity. Let me give you the definition of this word brevity. Concise and exact use of words in writing or speech. Now, I probably shouldn't even repeat it, but I will repeat it. I'm going against the grain of the very definition. Concise and exact words, concise and exact use of words in writing or speech. How do you achieve brevity then? How can you get good at being really concise and exact in the way that you talk? Practice. Prepare. Do the work ahead of time. Know what you're going to say before you say it. Isn't that a novel idea? Know what you're going to say before you say it. Any of you who's given any type of public speech, public presentation, have an idea at least of what you're going to say before you start talking. And unless you're really, really good at going off the top, even I have a framework. Usually if I do anything in front of an audience, even if it's a live stream or a Clubhouse room, this show right here, I have a framework for what I'm going to say. I don't write down every single word or every single point that I'm going to say. I have a quick little points. Every episode here, I have my points, point 1, point 2, point 3, and then I just go off of the points and I start talking because I have the seasoning to do that. But I don't just go in and just turn on the mic and say, all right, let me think about what I'm going to talk about. Or a live stream, I don't do that. I come up with it in my head at least, or I'll write it down before I get started. Prepare ahead of time for what you are going to say. Do not show up somewhere not knowing what you're going to say. Definitely know how you're going to end it. What is the point? What's the story? The story is the sauce that helps people remember it. How do people apply what you're saying? What do you want them to do with it? Rehearse saying your stuff so that you know what you want to get across, why you want to get it across, and how you're going to get it across. The more you do it, the better you get at it. You can get good at public speaking if you're publicly speaking often. If you have a podcast, if you do a live stream, if you get on a Clubhouse room or a YouTube video, whatever it is you want to do, get the practice, get the reps. That's what they call it in sports. You got to get the repetitions in there, get the game experience, metaphorically speaking, so that when it's time for you to do it in some other place that is maybe more high stakes, you're comfortable and you have the seasoning already. Preparation is a solution to a lot of challenges that many people have, especially when we're talking with public speaking. Again, public speaking doesn't have to be a speech where somebody hired you to be a speaker. This could be, again, in a panel situation. You could be in a cocktail party, a networking event, in a clubhouse room, on a live stream with another person. Do not take up all the air by talking too damn much. And usually people talk too much because they have no idea what exactly they want to say and they're figuring it out as they go along. Don't do that. Do not do that. Okay? People have very short attention spans these days. All right, so serve their attention spans. Let's recap today's class, which is the skill of verbal brevity. It is not lost on me. Again, now I have a daily show where I get to talk extemporaneously that I'm talking about this, but I'm qualified. I only speak like this because it's just my show. But anyway, this is something that I've seen in panel events and clubhouse rooms, anywhere where there are multiple people talking together. There's always that one person who just talks too goddamn much because they do not understand the skill, but that's why I'm making this masterclass, and I'll make sure I send it to them. So if you know someone who is guilty of this, send them the link to this episode. Point number 1, speaking sound bites. This is the biggest pet peeve I have when I'm on Clubhouse, is that people get an opportunity to ask a question or to introduce themselves and they just talk too much. Be able to introduce yourself or your question or your point within a 30-second to 2-minute range, depending on the venue. Read the room. All right, we know that you're amazing. We know you got a lot of stuff going on. Put it in your bio, put it on your website. Tell people, you want to know more about me, go to my website. All right, that's it. That's all you got to say. And people want to know more about you, they will go find it because you already put it on the internet and it's published. Many people make the mistake of speaking in chapters when they need to be speaking in paragraphs. Point number 2, point story application. This is a framework that tells you, be able to share your point, your story, or your application, or all 3 or 2 of the 3 in a very short burst. 30 seconds to 2 minutes, have a start and a finish. Many people start making a point, but they don't know how they're going to end their point. They don't have a story to go with it. They don't know what they want people to do with it. They just want to say something. All right. And these days, a lot of people are saying stuff, but ain't saying shit at the exact same time. Do not be this person. All right, if someone's telling you to land the plane because you are talking too much, don't start flying the plane if you don't know how to land the plane. Point number 3, definition of brevity is concise and exact use of words in writing or speech. How do you achieve brevity? Practice, prepare, know what you're going to say before you say it. Rehearse your stuff so that you know what you want to get across, why you're getting it across, and how you are getting it across. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Preparation is a solution to a lot of life's problems. Now, for the sake of brevity and the spirit of this episode, we're going to wrap it up right there. Work on your game. Dre all day.